So now I'm going to give you the anti-racist playbook, right? So number one, watch the news and social media in rations. Stay informed but not discouraged. There's a quote that I heard from Denzel Washington one day, and he said that if you don't watch the news or read the newspaper, you're misinformed. But if you do watch the news or read the newspaper, you're uninformed. So what are you going to do about it? Right? So you have to engage the news and the media in rations, right? Because if you sit there and watch too much of it, and you're thinking about your capacity to make change and the work that you're doing even in this space, you may feel like it is not doing anything. Because everything that you're going to see on the news is something that is dramatic, and it's going to be something put out there to grab headlines and to get attention, and it's going to be dramatic, right? But this type of work is oftentimes not covered or it's not exposed, and you're not going to see much of that. So the more that you watch this propaganda on television or on social media, the more discouraged you're actually going to be if you're striving to do something positive. So you have to watch it enough to be informed about laws that are being passed and how that's shaping the landscape where we live, but not to the point where you are completely inundated with this negativity. Right? Number two, learn by asking questions. Research through books, professional development, documentaries, films, music, museums, whatever. You have to take an anthropological approach towards learning about anything. Right? A lot of times back in the day, when you would have these anthropologists, right, travel to places like Africa or India or some of these other exotic places, some of them, they wouldn't take an anthropological approach. They wouldn't live amongst the people. They wouldn't be eating people's food or nothing like that. They would go in the middle of the jungle and set up English tea time in the middle of the jungle. And they drink an English tea around all of this, vegetation around them, right? But in order to really learn, you have to be committed to being immersed in learning about a culture and about a people, not being like a tourist, because you only see a certain amount of things as a tourist. Make genuine connections, and that leads into that. Make genuine connections with Black people in the interest of building relationships. I think I mentioned this before at one of my presentations, that connecting with a Mexican person isn't going to like their Mexican restaurant on Taco Tuesdays. And you've been there so much that you just know some of the people that work there by their first name. That's not necessarily a genuine connection. A genuine connection is, your children playing together. Maybe inviting them over to your house, or you may be going and visit them, or they may be involved in certain type of activities or something. You have to build relationships and be intentional about that. Right? Learn to center Black voices and hold space for our experiences. Be comfortable with being an extra in someone else's movie where they are the entire cast, director, and producers. Just talking about the way that this country was established and it being really white-centered or white supremacist, white people typically are comfortable just being the center of attention, even if people ain't even making you the center of attention. So because of that, white people tend to take up a lot of space, and a lot of times not even being conscious that they're doing that. Because historically, white people have been in a position of being in charge, right? And it's difficult sometimes to step back and say, you know what, I don't really need to be in this space, or to be taking up space, or to give my opinion or anything like that. I was recently a part of a summit about a week or so ago, and it was supposed to be a Black empowerment economic summit. And I get there and I see a bunch of non-Black people in the room, right? Now, if this was a Chinese summit for Chinese people, I would not feel comfortable, or they would not invite me into that room and start telling Chinese people about what they need to do in their businesses, or how they need to do this, or how they need to do that. I wouldn't be allowed to do that. And I wouldn't feel comfortable stepping into a space like that, taking up room. Same thing with the summit. If it was a bunch of Jewish people, I wouldn't feel comfortable, and they wouldn't bring me in there telling them how to run their businesses or their institutions, right? Or with women. As a man, it would not be appropriate for them to bring me into a space where it is a summit for women and they're making me the keynote speaker. What? There's been occasions where I've had those type of opportunities, and I deferred to a woman and said, no, you need to have a woman in this space to represent what it is that you're establishing as a foundation of what this is actually about. But the problem is, historically, because black people, those of us who have gone through that journey of enslavement, many of us have this paternalistic attitude towards white people and other people. Because historically, whenever we wanted to get together, we had to have a white person present to regulate or to control those type of gatherings. So generationally, many of us to this day still have that attitude that if we are striving to have a summit or we're striving to get together as black people, we need at least one person present that's white. And many people don't realize that they're actually doing that instead of really having the trust and the confidence that we can work things out within ourselves. Does that make sense to everybody? So holding space for people is vitally important in terms of things that you're actively striving to do. Financially invest in black businesses, organizations, and institutions that align with the principles of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Now, this is also important. Beware of white guilt grifters. When we started to see the development of Black Lives Matter movement, we saw a lot of people who were working in the best interests of black institutions, black businesses, and striving to make sure that there was true equity. But you had other people who came into that and they were grifters. They were utilizing that banner of Black Lives Matter or other different parts that are adjacent to it in order to be grifters and to play on your white guilt. And many of you might have gave money to some of these people, right? And that was the type of transactional relationship that some people actually established. So you have to also be conscious that you have people who deliberately do that. They're not really intentional about working on behalf of black people or to make things equitable or inclusive. They're just here to play on your white guilt, right? Use your privilege to advocate for black people in spaces where you are, starting with your family, community, businesses, organizations, and institutions. So you got to use your ability, right? I was talking to somebody recently, and she was telling me how she was thankful that one of her male friends speaks her name in rooms where there are not women present. Right? It sounds cool, but I'm like, yo, if he don't have no authority or no influence, it don't matter what name he's speaking in the room. That could just be an echo off of the wall somewhere. You have to be committed to a person that's able to allocate and dedicate actual resources to you as a woman business owner. Or if you started an institution or organization, you have to have somebody that is committed to something that is tangible, not just talk. Right? Because anybody could talk with anybody's name in a room. And then last but not least, teach your own people. Y'all got a hard job. You got a very hard job. But one of the ways to approach it is exactly what you've already been doing by making sure that our children have access to the knowledge and the wisdom that you all possess. Because they're going to be our future leaders. Right? And these are going to be the ones who change a lot of the things that we see in society right now. A lot of the things that we see that are going on, these are adults making these dumb decisions. Adults, right? And if we want to change those adults, we have to make sure that our children don't become those adults, right? So, next slide.